There are a lot of innocent people being killed by bombs that Israel is raining down upon Gaza.
I think it will be seen that the IDF really has done everything that is humanly possible to try to safeguard innocent civilians.
It's very hard to believe that, especially on a day when one of our producers lost 9 members of his family who are not members of Hamas, not members of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not members of any group, just 9 people just trying to live their lives.
Who is that man and what has he done with Jake Tapper? Because that is not something that I've become accustomed to seeing on his show or from Jake Tapper. But CNN had Israel's Mark Regev on, and he, spewed the usual talking points that we've heard from most individuals representing Israel on our cable news channels. And he said that, we're doing what we can to prevent civilian casualties, even as the number of civilian deaths in the Gaza Strip continues to rise day after day as a result of Israel's aerial bombardment of the region. Now, clearly, Jake Tapper wasn't buying his argument, and maybe the fact that the story is now much closer to him due to the loss of family that one of his producers experienced is what's kind of informing his reactions to what Regev is saying here. But I just wanna zoom in on Tapper for a second, because look at the skepticism on his face. It is pretty amazing.
I think it will be seen that the IDF really has done everything that is humanly possible to try to safeguard innocent civilians.
It's very hard to believe that, especially on a day when one of our producers lost 9 members of his family who are not members of Hamas, not members of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not members of any group, just 9 people just trying to live their lives.
So Cenk, I'm real curious what you think about the exchange so far. There's a lot more to get to, but what do you think?
Yeah, so this Mark Regev guy, his job is to do propaganda. That's okay, he's from a different government, a foreign government, and he's here to justify killing overwhelmingly civilians, over 15,000. They haven't been able to show any Hamas fighters that were killed. The Hamas fighters are in the tunnels are perfectly intact. And even the IDF says at most 1 to 2,000, an outrageous, ridiculous number that isn't close to true. But even if you take it at face value, that means at least 13,000 civilians bombed to death, their heads crushed, their bodies lit up,
dismembered as a result.
That's right, yeah. All of these things, and we've now seen a lot of it. I mean, I hate to point you to it, and I don't want you to it because it's hard to recover from it. But whether you see the Hamas atrocities that happen in Israel, or you see the kids that are crushed to death from the Israeli bombs in Gaza, it's hard to recover from that. And so 13,000 civilians murdered, killed, with almost no hope of actually getting the Hamas terrorists inside the tunnels. And so his job is to excuse that barbarism, okay? So that's his job. Jake Tapper doing a really good job, and he has been throughout. Now, like he saw that Israel tape on what Hamas did, and that shook him for a while, and any human being would be shaken by that, and I understand that. And there's nothing wrong with reporting that side. You should report both sides, right? So Tapper's done a terrific job. And that's coming from us who's criticized Tapper many times in the past.
Yes, especially on this issue in the past.
On this issue and many other issues. So thank you for doing good journalism. So credit where credit is due always. And guys, I want to say one more thing. You see, the anti-Semitic stereotypes are not true. They are not true. So Jake Tapper happens to be Jewish. Wolf Blitzer was not only Jewish, but worked for AIPAC at a point. But they're asking some of the toughest questions on television of the Israeli government. So they're not controlling the media, and they're not protecting Israel. They are doing their jobs as American journalists and doing a really good job. Because now hatred is spreading all across against Jews, against Muslims, against Palestinians, and we're trying to bring all of that down. Okay, now, and remember, this is not about race or religion. It is about governments. And what the government of Israel, the right-wing government of Israel has done is atrocious, and Regev is about to try to justify it.
So in this next clip, you're gonna understand why Jake Tapper, especially in this exchange, is super skeptical of the usual talking points and seems to reject it. So let's take a look.
First of all, I extend my sorrow to him and my sympathies. But if I saw your report correctly, and please correct me if I say something wrong, that happened in northern Gaza, in Gaza City, where a month ago we already asked all the civilians to leave. And most of them did. If there was like 1,200,000 people there was only a couple of tens of thousands left. And one has to ask, yes, they had ample opportunity to leave. I don't know what happened. I don't have the specific circumstances. I know there's deadly combat going on now in the north, still between these IDF and Hamas terrorists, yes? And we don't want to see anyone caught up in the crossfire, but why didn't they heed the advice and leave the area?
You can't blame them. There's now
fighting.
I don't
blame them.
But you can't, there's fighting in the south now. I mean, I've been asking this since October 7th. Where are these people supposed to go?
Jake Tapper's 1,000% right. And Mark Regev absolutely did blame them. Why didn't they evacuate the north? I don't know, they were reportedly trapped in the north. And even if they had tried to make that journey to the south, as we all know, as we've shared evidence of, Israel had no problem, the IDF had no problem continuing their aerial bombardment in the south as well as the north, okay? It was more intense in the north, but they were still doing bombings in the south. And so some Palestinians were like, what is the point of risking our lives on this journey to the south when there's a good chance that we can be harmed on that journey or suffer from airstrikes once we get there? And so he was blaming them. Why didn't they evacuate to the south? No, why did you guys make the decision to engage in indiscriminate bombing? Okay, more than half of the residential buildings in Gaza gone, wiped away. Millions of people displaced. 80% of people living in Gaza have been displaced. And I want to give you some more information about the producer who lost 9 family members in Gaza, 9 family members with one Israeli drone strike, airstrike, not drone strike, airstrike. So CNN reports that Ibrahim Daman, that's the producer, luckily escaped to Egypt with his young family nearly a month ago. But on Sunday, he heard news that at least 9 relatives trapped in northern Gaza had been killed in a strike on his aunt's house. Now, his childhood home in Gaza City was also obliterated in a separate strike on an adjacent building the same day. So that strike actually happened before the strike that ended up killing 9 of his family members. An Israeli strike had directly hit the building where his relatives were living in Bet Lahia, killing his uncle and uncle's wife, daughter, and 2 grandchildren, as well as his aunt, her husband, and 2 children. At least 2 other relatives are in critical condition, and still others are still buried under that rubble. So imagine knowing that not only have you lost 9 family members, some of them are just under rubble right now. Rubble that people can't take bodies out of because they don't have the fuel to operate the machines necessary to get through that rubble and get to the bodies. It's just an incredibly devastating story. And I think the callous nature in which Mark Regev handled that moment was important for people to see. Because it's just like this complete disregard and brazen attitude toward human lives or the loss of human lives.
Yeah, so we've used the Armenian genocide as an example many times, but you could do it with any of the forced marches in genocides throughout the history of the world. So the Bataan Death March, the Trail of Tears, etc. To have a representative of the government that committed that genocide come out and go, well, why didn't they do the Bataan Death March? Well, if they stayed, of course we were gonna kill them. They're civilians and they're a family and they got kids. Well, of course we were gonna murder them unless they did the death march. And when they got to the end of the death march, we were gonna kill them there. So why didn't they move? But okay, so it's intensely callous, it's inhumane, it's disgusting. Now I'm gonna give the most ironic defense of Mark Regev. What's he supposed to say? That's what his government did do. And there's no defense of it. Like, well, how do you defend killing that family?
You can't.
You can't, you just can't. So there is no defense of the Israeli government's actions. And so, except for this insane, every talking point is insane. The Palestinians hate us. When were they supposed to love you? In the middle of a 50-year occupation? Like, the Armenians hate the Turks, so the Armenians had it coming? The Turks had a right the Ottoman Empire had a right to defend itself? It would be absurd, right? Absurd. Whenever any giant government or empire says, well, those minorities or those people that have no power, they dared to rise up against my empire. And of course I kill them all because the empire had a right to defend itself. But yet we treat it seriously here in America, and those talking points are everywhere. And Regev's job is to come out here and to do propaganda on behalf of genocide. So thank you to Jake Tapper and CNN for holding him accountable.
Yep, and I have to go to one last video of their exchange because I really do think Jake Tapper deserves credit for how he handled this conversation. Let's take a look.
Now we're being more specific because it is more complicated in the South. We've actually designated areas in the South which are safer areas, which are especially, there's a number of them. We've shared the maps with the United States. It's been shared also with the UN and the other humanitarian organizations. Listen, we have to hit Hamas in Khan Yunis. They've got a strong military infrastructure there. They've got a network of tunnels. If we want to destroy Hamas's military machine, and we have to act in the South as well.
So that heavy sigh, even though he's not verbalizing anything in that clip that I just showed you, the heavy sigh is a clear indication that he is not buying what Regev is selling. And he had counterpoints throughout that segment. So shout out to Jake Tapper and how he handled that segment. He did well, and I hope that that continues. Because by the way, you should be 1000% skeptical of any claims coming out of Hamas. But the same is true when you're hearing talking points coming out of the Israeli government as well. And there have been moments, okay, to be fair, where I think Jake Tapper slipped a little and just kind of took what the IDF and the Israeli government had to say at face value without challenging anything. But you should, as a journalist, as someone who works in news media, be skeptical of all claims and do the best you can in figuring out whether the claims being made are truthful claims. And I think it's pretty clear, given the high civilian death toll, given the fact that you have 1.8 million Palestinians displaced, you have more than half of the buildings completely demolished in the Gaza Strip. It's pretty clear that they are not actually doing what they claim, which is taking measures to minimize civilian casualties.
Yeah, and last thing is, if you noticed from what Regev was saying in that interview, he said, well, we told them to go march south. That's why we dropped a bomb and killed the family of your producer. So they had it coming. And then later he said, well, obviously we have to bomb the south. There's some Hamas fighters there and some tunnels. Okay, so they wouldn't have been safe if they went to the south, according to your own admission within the same interview. Doesn't care. He's like, because they're not trying to get Hamas. They're trying to do maximum damage. Netanyahu talking about thinning the herd. And that's referring to Palestinians as animals and admitting, yeah, we're doing ethnic cleansing. And so, and tons of cabinet ministers that we've given you direct quotes from saying, yeah, we were gonna retake Gaza. Just gonna take it. And so that's what the objective here is. Have you guys seen, and one of our members wrote this, and I'm sorry I don't have your name right now, but I love that we do the show with you guys because they made a great point that, wait, have you seen any IDF videos of fighting inside the tunnels? Or even heard of fighting inside the tunnels? No, Hamas is in the tunnels, but they won't go in the tunnels because they're not trying to get Hamas. I know it's dangerous in the tunnels, but the fighters are in the tunnels. Killing the civilians above ground does you no good if you're trying to get Hamas. And you saying, oh, well, the hostages and the fighters are in the tunnels, but I'm too scared to go in, so I'm just killing civilians instead. That's not the defense you think it is.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.